When it comes to oil, or any lubricant for that matter, there's a lot of opinions floating around out there, but very little actual fact. This is why I'm sharing this with you. As a member of the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers, we deal with the science of lubrication. Throw out all the marketing hype, forget about sponsorships, and what your granddaddy told you. STLE deals with the facts. The next 5 points we're focusing on in this video series are not my opinions. They're the facts condensed from the work of hundreds of PhD scientists over the last 100 years learning how lubricants actually work. So with that out of the way, let's get started with the 4 R's. Proper lubrication can be defined as having the right oil, at the right place, at the right time, and in the right amount. You can define the right oil as one that has the proper viscosity and additive package for the application. But that oil is useless if it cannot reach the parts it needs to lubricate, clean, and cool. In fact, it just doesn't need to reach those parts. The lubricant needs to arrive on time and in enough quantity to properly lubricate, cool, and clean the part. Think about an engine. Motor oil needs to flow through the engine to provide an oil film for the moving parts, which reduces friction and wear. But it also carries away heat and contaminants. Some people like to talk about an oil's load-carrying ability, but that fails to consider that motor oil is more than just a lubricant. Motor oils must clean, cool, and transfer power. Think about your hydraulic roller lifters or a variable valve timing system in your engine. You may not realize it, but up to 40% of an engine's cooling is actually done by the oil. All of this is in addition to just being a lubricant. The key takeaway here is to make sure that you're using a lubricant designed specifically for the equipment that you are lubricating. To recap, you need to remember the 4 R's: having the right oil at the right place, at the right time, and in the right amount. Today, performance enthusiasts have a broad selection of lubricants engineered for specific applications, and these products can make a really big difference in the longevity and the performance of the equipment they're designed for. I'm Lake Speed Jr. Up next, we'll talk about how more isn't always better. If some is good, more must be better, right? Wrong, but it sounds good in theory, doesn't it? As with most things in life, balance is key, and that's definitely true with lubricants as well. I'm Lake Speed Jr., and like we discussed last time, I'm a member of the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers, and we deal with the science of lubrication. This is part 2 in our series that is discussing the 5 things you should know about oil. Today, we're talking about balance. Too much of any one good thing can actually hurt the lubricant, but having the right balance lets every component do its job without hindering the others. It's really important to understand that. Everyone knows ZDP is a good thing, but did you know that too much ZDP can actually increase wear? Too much viscosity can starve parts of needed lubrication. Even too much lubricant can cause churning, which increases the operating temperature and aerates the oil. Air bubbles aren't great lubricants. And proper balance isn't limited to lubrication's chemistry. Your local parts store has a shelf full of pretty bottled miracles screaming at you they're just going to fix all of your mechanical problems. If you think your current lubricant is deficient, don't try to fix it with an additive. Just use an oil that's designed for your application. When an oil is designed for the application, it doesn't need any more additives or anything else for that matter. On the same note, you should know that putting an additive in your oil is a bit like playing chemical Russian roulette, which is just as dangerous as it sounds to your engine. If the additive and the oil don't mix properly, some chemicals don't combine well, you'll have less lubrication than if you'd done nothing. This is especially true for ZDP additives and other motor oil supplements. Simply put, use an oil that was designed for your equipment and you'll be on the right path. Now that you have the proper lubricant installed and filled to the proper level, it's time to protect it. I'm Lake Speed Jr., a certified lubrication specialist and a member of the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers. It may sound funny, but in reality, STLE members have spent the last 100 years learning how lubricants actually work. These 5 things are facts, not opinion, not marketing hype, facts that you should know about oil. Today we're talking about how to protect your oil. In other words, how to keep your oil clean, dry, and cool. Dirty oil is a bad lubricant, no matter how advanced the oil itself actually is. Sometimes it's tough to keep the lubricant clean, especially in dirty and wet environments, but it's a job definitely worth doing. Not only do dirt particles cause abrasive wear in the equipment, but the increased wear metals mean the oil gets dirty even faster. Keeping the debris under control is the job of the filters. Very high quality filters, not necessarily high flow filters, can capture dirt and remove it from the system. It's a proven fact that oil stays cleaner longer if you change the filter between oil changes. And it's a great way to get the maximum life out of your lubricant and the equipment. If the oil is clean, cool, and dry, then it's going to be good for a very long time. This allows you to extend drain intervals without compromising the protection of your equipment. Now I keep saying cool and dry. Water is a poor lubricant. Worse than that, it also depletes the lubricant of the additives that it needs to do its job. Now to keep the lubricant dry, it's recommended to keep the oil sump temperature between 180 degrees Fahrenheit and 220 degrees Fahrenheit, or 90 degrees Celsius and 100 degrees Celsius for our friends overseas. That's hot enough to keep any moisture out of the oil. For every 20 degrees over 220 degrees Fahrenheit, the life of the oil drops significantly, which circles back around to part 2 where we talked about balance. You need some heat in the oil, but not too much. I'm Lake Speed Jr., and I'll be back soon to talk about getting your facts straight. Despite what internet comment sections would lead you to believe, you cannot argue with the facts. And when it comes to your oil, it's always good to have the facts. As always, I'm Lake Speed Jr. If you're just joining us, I encourage you to watch the other parts of the series. The links are in the description below. Now, to get you up to speed, we're talking about the 5 things you need to know about oil. As we've talked about before, these are not myths or hand-me-down knowledge. These are facts gathered from the research of hundreds of PhD scientists along with the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers. When you know the facts, you can make informed decisions. What about your oil in your application? You need to know those facts too. No matter what your application, a 2-stroke snowmobile in Canada, a jet boat in New Zealand, a small block Chevy in small town USA, or anywhere in between. Every situation is different and presents its own challenges, but a used oil analysis can give you the data to help navigate these challenges based on fact rather than speculation or opinion. It may sound complicated, but it's ridiculously easy and not very expensive, and it gives you a wealth of information in the process. Most heavy equipment dealers, like Caterpillar or John Deere, sell used oil analysis kits, usually for less than $30. All you have to do is take a small 3-ounce sample of lubricant directly from the equipment within a few minutes of shutting it down. Fill out a few forms to identify the sample for processing and send it off to the lab. And don't worry, 3 ounces is not considered hazardous, so you can send it via regular mail. That's it, you're done. In a few days, you'll get the results back, and you don't even have to decipher anything. They provide the interpretation of the results for you. It's just that simple, and it can make a big difference for you. To really stay on top of things, have your oil analyzed on a periodic basis, say every 6 months or 4,000 miles. I'm Lake Speed Jr. Next time, we'll be talking about your fuel. And you thought we were just going to be talking about oil. The 5th thing you need to know about motor oil is that fuel matters. Wait, what? I'm Lake Speed Jr., certified lubrication specialist and member of the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers. And today, we're going to talk about something that you probably don't consider when you're thinking about motor oil: fuel. The type of fuel that you use directly affects your oil. and that applies to any additives you may also be putting in your fuel. I could talk to you all day about fuel and what it can do to an engine, but for now, let's stick to what's called the oil-to-fuel ratio. You may have never heard of the oil-to-fuel ratio before, but if you have an oil life monitor in your car, that's what it uses to calculate and tell you when to change your oil. In reality, your engine's not sampling the oil and analyzing it. Instead, it uses the oil-to-fuel ratio to calculate and tell you when to change your oil. Simply put, the more fuel that gets in the oil, the shorter the oil life and the worse the lubricant performs. So how does fuel get into the motor oil? Well, some of the air-fuel mixture makes its way past the piston rings and ends up in the crankcase with the oil. If the carburetor or fuel injectors are dirty, then the fuel tends to drip or spray instead of atomizing. These droplets of fuel can mix with the oil on the cylinder walls and leak back down into the crankcase. But why is this bad for the oil? There are a few reasons. First, fuel dilution lowers the viscosity of the oil. The higher the fuel dilution, the more viscosity you lose. Not good. Second, the fuel is not as stable as the oil, so higher levels of fuel dilution lead to a faster breakdown of the motor oil. Third, if you're using an ethanol blended fuel, it can cause rust and corrosion inside your engine, which is really bad. Fortunately, some fuel additives can keep both injectors and carburetors clean and working properly. Also, some fuel additives and even some motor oils have improved rust and corrosion protection to fight the effects of ethanol blended fuel. The takeaway here is that you can either increase or decrease the performance and life of your lubricant and the equipment it protects, just with your choice of fuel and fuel additives. I'm Wake Speed Jr., and I hope this video series was eye-opening to some of the things you might not have considered about oil and lubricants. I know I've made each of these mistakes at some point, but now I know the facts, and so do you.